All right, we're going to get started here. So, hi everyone, and welcome to Mind Matters, Mood and Art. I'm Jack DiCarlo, a research tech with the Heinz C. Proctor Bipolar Research Program. The Proctor Program has been conducting research in the bipolar field for over 20 years and is the largest bipolar disorder research program in the United States. Joining us today is visiting scholar and keynote speaker, Catarina Castela. Catarina will present on monitoring mood variation in bipolar disorder, an interdisciplinary study on the relationship between mood and formal art elements. Catarina is a PhD student at Curtin University in Perth, Western Australia. She has over 20 years of experience as a graphic designer, working across national and international projects. In 2016, she completed a master's degree at Curtin University, exploring the cognitive and psychological underpinnings of aesthetic preferences. Catarina's PhD research is grounded in lived experience of bipolar disorder. It investigates the relationships between bipolar disorder and creative expression, examining how changes in visual elements within drawings, such as line quality, color use, and composition, may reflect underlying psychological states to reveal patterns in mood fluctuation and symptom severity. Before we begin, this webinar is being recorded. The recording will be uploaded to the Proctor Program's YouTube playlist and our website, proctorprogram.org. Questions can be submitted by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, and there is an option to submit questions anonymously. After Catarina's presentation, there will be a Q&A portion, and we'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible. Now, without further ado, Catarina, thank you for joining us this evening. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you for the introduction, Jack, and thank you everyone for joining me here today. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my research, and I'll start with going through a few of the theories and concepts that make the foundation of the artwork, of the research. So bear with me just a moment. Okay, so I'll start off with long before we developed language, we used art to tell our stories and share our experiences. It reflects a fundamental human need to express ourselves visually. Art continues to act as a universal language, transcends culture, time, and language barriers. The Prinzhorn collection was started by Hans Prinzhorn in 1922. And he printed his book, Artistry of the Mentally Ill, and it was considered a cornerstone of psychiatric art. It features art by around 133 psychiatric patients and includes his analysis and commentary on several pieces. His training as a psychiatrist and also background in art history gave him a unique perspective to see this artwork through a different lens. He went against conventional thought, and rather than viewing the art as meaningless product of pathology, he saw in these artworks authentic and powerful expressions of the inner experience, and argued that art provided direct and unfiltered access to the subconscious, to deeper psychological truths. Today, the Prinzhorn collection remains one of the most significant archives in psychiatric art and houses over 5,000 artworks by more than 450 patients from psychiatric institutions. His work also led to changes in the art world, not just in psychiatry, and laid the groundwork for movements such as Art Brut and later on the emergence of outsider art. The term Art Brut was coined by French artist Jean Dubuffet and describes art created outside the traditional art world. Dubuffet was deeply inspired by Prinzhorn's collection and shared his view on psychiatric art as pure and raw expressions of their inner world, free from ego and commercial influence. The movement challenged the boundaries of what was considered art and who was considered an artist. While these movements contributed to a greater understanding of the emotional and psychological complexity of art, it also led to the romanticism of the tortured artist. The notion that the tortured artist is the idea that great genius is born from psychological suffering. Artists such as Van Gogh, who came to embody the idea that mental anguish fueled artistic greatness. It glamorized psychological torment and emotional pain. And in doing so, it obscured the lived experience of the artist's struggle with mental illness. The legacy of the tortured artist still persists today. However, it's being increasingly criticized, with growing awareness on the harmful repercussions of romanticizing mental illness. So while the tortured artist's scope can be a reductive and damaging portrayal of mental illness, there is growing body of evidence suggesting that more complex connections between creativity and mental illness exists, pointing to a potential shared psychological, neural, and genetic traits that may link creativity and disorders such as schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. Models such as the inverted U model, which suggests that creativity peaks at moderate levels of arousal or cognitive disinhibition. If there's too little stimulation, creativity suffers, but too much can lead to cognitive overload or symptoms associated with psychiatric conditions. The psychoticism model argues that traits such as impulsivity and nonconformity, when present in mild subclinical levels, can promote divergent thinking, originality, and enhance creativity. But again, the key is balance. Too much can lead to psychological distress and risk of psychosis. The shared neurobiology hypothesis should suggest that dopamine plays a key role in both creative thought and disorders such as bipolar. It proposes that dopamine pathways, especially in the frontal cortex and limbic systems, may help explain the relationship between creativity and mood disorders. And finally, the shared vulnerability model proposes that creativity and psychopathology may stem from overlapping traits such as cognitive disinhibition and emotional intensity. That these traits, when moderated by protective factors such as cognitive control, can lead to creative achievement, but without these protective factors may again lead to psychological distress or risk of psychosis. There's also some evidence suggesting a genetic link between bipolar and creativities. Some studies have found that individuals with high scores of creative assessments, such as measures of divergent thinking, will also often carry genetic variants that are associated to and linked to bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. Similarly, there is evidence suggesting that potential familial link, with research indicating that individuals with bipolar disorder and their first-degree relatives often show high levels of creativity and are more likely to want to work in creative fields, suggesting that both creativity and bipolar disorder may be hereditary traits. But it depends on environment and individual factors. One of the most influential texts in the link between bipolar disorder and creativity is Kay Jamison's book, Touched with Fire, A Manic Depressive Illness and Artistic Temperament. In it, she combines genetic research with detailed biographical accounts to explore complex relationships between bipolar disorder and creativity, and suggests that the intense emotional states associated with bipolar disorder can drive extraordinary creativity, but also lead to profound suffering. As mentioned earlier, Vincent van Gogh, widely viewed as the embodiment of the tortured artist, though never formally diagnosed, it's widely believed that he had bipolar disorder, and in paintings like The Starry Night are often seen as visual reflections of his emotional state. His use of bold color, energetic brushwork, emotionally charged imagery reflect his emotional intensity and struggle with mental illness. This slide comparing his work chronologically, you can see the dramatic shifts in style such as color intensity, emotional tone, and changing as his illness progressed throughout his life. Another artist is Yaoi Kusama. She's a Japanese living artist who openly discusses her struggle with mental illness, which include hallucinations, anxiety, and obsessive compulsive disorder. She has described her art as a central part of her process in coping with these experiences. Her Infinity Net series, she began painting these when she was sort of influenced by childhood hallucinations, and she saw the world as being enveloped by endless nets and dots. She describes this compulsive repetition as both a manifestation of her struggle and mental health, and as a therapeutic process to cope with it as well. This is one of her installations. It's the Infinity Mirror Rooms, which is beautiful, immersive, and disorientating, recreating a sense of altered perception. It embodies her concept of self-obliteration, the loss of boundaries between self and space. And this is another one of her installations as well, and it just shows her most famous motif, which is repetitive dots. It can be argued that psychopathology is especially evident in the distinctive characteristics of art created by individuals with schizophrenia, such as Lewis Wayne, who was a British artist first known for his whimsical cats, and which were featured in popular magazines at the time. And later in life, he started to develop symptoms of schizophrenia. And his cat illustrations became increasingly more abstract. They went from naturalistic depictions of cats, as you can see on the top left-hand corner, progressively morphing into psychedelic, vivid colors and complex geometrical patterns. As his symptoms became more severe, his work is often cited as visual reflections of schizophrenia. And you can see, because his subject always stays the same, you can actually see it as a compelling example of how changes in formal elements such as line, color, and structure can reflect these psychological states. Brian Charnley is also another example. He created a series of 17 self-portraits as part of a personal experiment where he wanted to show the psychological impact of schizophrenia while he gradually reduced his medication. And you can see from his early works a controlled and realistic, but become increasingly fragmented and surreal. These elements used reflect paranoia, identity, disintegration, and emotional turmoil. The final portrait on the bottom right-hand corner is nearly unrecognizable, and it expresses the peak of his psychosis. These portraits offer a rare first-hand visual narrative of schizophrenia and stand as a powerful, honest contribution to our understanding of mental illness. So my study aims to explore fluctuations in mood and how they're reflected in art. I'm focusing on formal elements of art such as line, shape, and form, with my primary goal being to develop and validate an art-based mood monitoring method called the MET. That will also include an objective rating tool to monitor mood fluctuations and affective symptoms in adults with bipolar disorder. I'll get back to that in just a moment, but first, how do we turn subjective analysis to objective analysis? So the problem with art-based assessments is generally the subjective analysis. Although they're increasingly recognized as useful tools to give clinical insights, they are often criticized for their subjective interpretation, which lacks scientific evidence to support those observations. To address these limitations, researchers have developed rating tools to extract quantitative or objective data from these drawings. Rating tools are not art-based assessments in themselves, but rather standardized, well-defined guides that focus mainly on analyzing formal elements of art. The two most widely used are the formal elements of art scale and the diagnostic drawing series. The The formal elements of art scale, as you can see here, uses a 5-point equal interval scale to measure variables in 14 elements within a single drawing. The feat's strength lies in identifying variables in clusters of formal elements with drawings that correlates with clusters of symptoms as diagnosed in the Diagnostics Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So the degree to which an element is present adds to a tally to determine whether the presence of the symptom and the strength of that symptom, such as depression or anxiety. The feat acts independently without the need for interaction with patients, and it focuses solely on quantitative analysis. The diagnostic drawing series, the DDS, shares the same principles as the feats, but takes a more comprehensive approach by including structural components such as placement of objects and amount of space used. Drawings are assessed according to specific set of rating criteria outlined in the drawing analysis form, which includes 23 scales to rate elements based on primarily the presence or absence by answering yes or no. So in summary, the formal art elements therapy scale quantifies formal elements, and the diagnostic drawing series objectively evaluates structural components of the drawings. So the MET is structured around 2 core components. The first is a self-monitoring tool that encourages regular drawings in a visual journal, along with a brief mood questionnaire for each drawing to help patients identify mood patterns, potential triggers, and the onset of major episode. The second component uses the MET's rating tool, which will be specifically designed for the MET based on the feats and DDS to track changes in variables and formal elements within that drawing. By combining patient data with these objective measures, therapists can track illness progression, develop informed mood profiles, and personalized treatment strategies using real-time data. So participants will be, recruitment will be over 18 years of age, clinical diagnosis of bipolar 1 or 2, and they'll be recruited through various sources. This is a quick overview of the study design. So I have started with a systematic literature review, followed by the preliminary development of the MET, a pilot study that will go for about 3 months, and then a primary study from about 9 to 12 months. And will also include a researcher-based longitudinal study that will go through the entire time. So this is just like a little bit of an overview of the pilot study and what participants will be asked to do. So they'll be asked to make regular drawings in visual journal, which could be scribbles on a page or anything, and along with a short questionnaire for each drawing. Excuse me. Participant interviews will also be included, about one a fortnight, so bi-weekly. They'll be semi-structured, and in person or digital is okay. Excuse me. So this is just a mock-up of the visual journal, what it may look like. And so some of the benefits of this monitoring method are that it will encourage patients to express themselves creatively, even during challenging time, provide therapeutic benefits while generating actionable data. It's low cost and easily accessible material. By shifting focus from symbolic analysis to variables and formal elements, it's also culturally inclusive, and it leverages the natural inclination of individuals with bipolar disorder to engage in creative activities, fostering long-term adherence, and also acts as a retrospective record of mood, thoughts, and emotions captured in real time. So I want to finish by thanking my supervisors, so Professor Warren Mansell and Dr. Jason Charbonnet. And I want to say thank you as well to the wonderful people at the Practice program for giving me this opportunity. And last but not least, thank you everyone for joining me here today.
All right, so we're gonna give some time for Q&A, so feel free to ask any questions you guys have in the Q&A portion of the chat. So the first question for you, Katarina, would be a question about your particular education pathway. So, have you thought about or put in consideration art therapy as part of your research, or has that ever been a thought that crossed your career path? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. Are you talking about me professionally or about the research?
You professionally, have you studied art therapy as part of your education path, or did you ever consider it?
It's something that I'm definitely considering. I don't have experience in art therapy. Um, the original idea for the MET came from lived experience where I noticed changes in my own artwork. Um, but yeah, it's something that I'll definitely consider for the future.
All right. And then another question we have here, is does a person's skill at art impact your ability to assess the changes?
No, absolutely not. That's one of the benefits of using this method is that all it's doing is analyzing the formal elements in the art. So changes in color, in size, in line, and things like that. So it doesn't matter what you draw. You can draw abstract drawings, you can draw actual depictions of things. It measures the changes within those variables of the drawing. So it's inclusive, and it has nothing to do with artistic ability.
So then another question we have in is can poetry be a part of this method? Is that incorporated at all, or have you thought about that?
That's a really interesting question. Yeah, I have thought about that, and also music could be a potential application, but that's sort of further down the line. Starting off with art and art elements, and then I can definitely see it being applied to broader creative outlets for sure.
Another question we have here is do you see AI taking any role in this analysis?
Maybe not necessarily AI to start with. There are some studies that have tried to score drawings using computer systems, and there is some positive results, but mainly the data suggests that it's not as intuitive or not as precise as humans are at the moment. But not so much AI, but I can definitely see some kind of program down the line. If it can be developed to be sensitive enough to pick up like the minute changes in drawings and things. So yeah, that's definitely a possibility. But who knows, the way AI is developing nowadays, maybe.
Okay, and then I have another question in the chat asking about if they have any concerns for their child potentially having bipolar disorder. Do you think it's beneficial to keep their artwork?
Um, yeah, I mean, it can't hurt. I would suggest possibly dating it as well. So that might, and if there's anything happening at the time, maybe jot it down on the back. Um, and you can sort of start creating your own archive that could be analyzed later on if that's what you wish. Yeah, I think that's a really good idea.
And then what type of arts or mediums of arts do you think are particularly telling of changes in someone's mood?
I think the most are drawings and paintings, the most expressive. And that can include watercolor, it can even drawings with ink. Um, there's a lot of really good data on that. I don't know if there's a lot of data on digital art. So because I think especially when people are episodic, they really want to do things with their hands more so than on a computer screen. So I think, and that adds to the therapeutic benefit of it as well. Um, so it can even be just pencil drawings, it can be black and white drawings. There's even data on one of the assessments that scores the tonal range within pencil shadings. So it can be as sensitive as that as well. Um, and yeah, I guess it can be applied to most artistic forms that you can see differences. Um, in how you use the equipment or the materials.
And then another question we have here is, have you considered consulting or working with a board certified and licensed art therapist?
Yeah, I would absolutely love to, for sure. That's definitely in the future. Um, I'm a little bit limited for where I live in Perth, so there's not a lot of art therapy available, but absolutely, it's something that I would really like to consider doing. Yeah, for sure.
And then I know this answer, but do you enjoy creating art yourself?
I do. Yes, I've been doing it since I was a child, so I can see the
Uh,
benefits in the therapeutic benefits as well as the diagnostic benefits from it.
and then we have another question coming in that is first off saying thank you for the wonderful presentation. But would you encourage people to journal? And then do you have any plans for the future with this program?
Yeah, I would absolutely encourage people to journal. In fact, that's one of the benefits as well of the MET is that the questionnaire kind of adds that extra component of being a journal, because it will have also open-ended questions to sort of ask people how you're feeling, what's going on with your day. So sort of prompting them to express what's happening with them verbally, not just uh, in drawings. Um, and I think I mean, it's not for everyone to be able to sit and write, which is why I think joining the two mediums is sort of best of both worlds. But if it's something that you feel like you can do, I highly recommend doing it. And you can even just doodle on a page. I mean, it doesn't have to be so set out and so definitive, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And then another question coming in here says you said you had lived experience. Is this a challenging job or work for you to do? For you to do with this work?
No, it's in fact it's the opposite. I think it helps with the diagnosis as well, knowing that you're at least trying to do something that will benefit yourself and others that are going through something similar as well. And also learning more about your disorder, it gives you understand what's happening to you a lot better, I think. So yeah, it's definitely helped.
All right. And then another question we have here is there a relationship between this and how an individual's handwriting can change or evolve with mood change or mental state?
You know, I do think that that's quite possible. It all sort of stems with similar places, I guess, but yeah, I would say so. I mean, I know myself if I'm sort of tired or in a rush or my handwriting will change. Whereas if I'm sort of calmer and I've got a bit more time, I have very neat handwriting. But otherwise I can have, writing that you can't even read, that I can't even read later on. So yeah, I definitely think that it might be a bit more limited though, because it's not as expressive visually, unless you're doing typography or something like that. Um, but yeah, I think there could be something in that. Yeah.
Okay, and then another personal one, but what is your medium? What type of art do you usually do?
All of it. I do everything. I do everything from pencil to markers to watercolor to ink to digital. Um, yeah, everything that you can. It just depends again on the mood and depends on what I'm inspired by at that time.
All right, and here is another question for you. So, in what ways can art empower patients to express their experiences with illness or healing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So in several ways, one can be one of probably the most obvious ways is that it can be through when you can't sort of verbalize what you're going through, you can try and draw it. And you can find that in drawing that it also gives you those therapeutic benefits of dealing with internal struggles. Um, does that answer your question? So I got a bit lost in that question.
I think so. I think that sums it up. Um, and then can you say more about how the subjective component and the objective components are connected? What is the intended size of the data sample as well?
Okay, so they're connected by from the mock-up that I showed you. Wish I could bring it back up. So it's got the questionnaire and then the drawing as well. So with the subjective part of it, so that's where the individual themselves can learn to see changes in their drawings, learn to sort of notice what changes may mean, and that there are, even if there are changes, that could be something that they need to sort of keep an eye on, or it just may be that they're influenced by different things, but it's over time they'll be able to sort of notice those patterns, and then the questionnaire acts as almost like a retrospective journal, like a diary as well, that contextualizes those drawings. So the objective part of it, that's where the rating tool comes in. So the rating tool, an art therapist or a clinician can then score those drawings, like however many drawings there are, score them, and then connect that data as well with the questionnaire and sort of contextualize it all through that, and then give some quantitative analysis from the measurement of the drawings, and over time be able to create mood profiles. So to be combining that quantitative data that comes from scoring the drawings with the qualitative data that comes from what the participant has written regarding what they were feeling at the time of that drawing, and putting it all together creates mood profiles. It helps you identify, it will hopefully help you identify patterns, triggers, and allow you yourself to go back through it, and sort of even points of recovery, like when you were feeling better and in a stable state, you're not anymore for whatever reason, you can go back and you can have a look at what was happening at that time that helped you recover, that helped you feel stable, and is there something that you can do now, like that, to make yourself feel better now. Sorry if that makes sense.
Yes, yeah, that's a great answer. And then what kinds of transformations have you seen when with this approach?
Well, we've only just start. Oh, sorry. In the sample, the primary study, we're hoping to get about 10 people. So it's just going to be really, sorry, the pilot study. So it's going to be small, and it's just to refine the monitoring method. The primary study is going to be, we're hoping, at least 50 people. So the more data we can get, the better, obviously, the results are going to be. And so what was the question again to that?
Oop, I just went past it. 1 second.
Sure.
What kind of transformations have you seen when with this approach? Which I guess it's kind of in the process, but
Yeah, it's still in the process. But I'll get back to you on that one.
And then do you see changes in art when someone is elevated versus depressed? Any changes in production time or how much content is produced?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like bipolar, it is very individualistic. So what I've found, it's not that you can't just say that, for example, a lot of black means, someone's depressed, or a lot of abstract work means that someone's manic. It depends very much on the individual. There is a lot of data suggesting that, as I'm sure you would have heard, that sort of darker colors are more akin to depressive modes. But with me, for example, when I'm depressed, I draw really colorful, intricate drawings. Whereas when I'm sort of more stable, it's quite a muted palette, and states closer to hypomania. That's a lot more abstract, but still quite bright colors as well, and sort of changing towards a little bit darker around the fringes of that. So I kind of got a bit more variable in there. So, but that depends on the person, and as well with frequency. So some people, if they're depressed, they may be more likely to seek that therapeutic benefit of drawing, or extreme hypomanic states, for example, or extreme states of in either direction. It would definitely reduce artistic production in that way, for obvious reasons. So absolutely, it can. But then there's also stories of people, of artists who enter into a manic or hypomanic episode and they'll lock themselves which is not healthy. I wouldn't recommend it, into their studio and just produce art for days on end, you know? So it depends
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
individual.
And then can you share more about your background in neuroaesthetic? Can you like tell the audience more what that means?
So neuroaesthetics is about how your brain processes its visual environment and how um, these mechanisms appeal to your aesthetic preference, basically. Um, so it sort of touches on this research a little bit as well, in that it has to do with the brain, how it visualizes and how it expresses how it's influenced by its environment and how it expresses itself. Um, so yeah, it's some, if I start talking about it though, I won't stop. But if you're interested in neuroaesthetics, I would highly recommend having a look in it. There's some very interesting studies. And especially if you're interested in sort of seeing how art can be reflected, how symptoms can be reflected in art, I would highly recommend researching that.
And then so another not really question came in, but they just said this was great information and they would hope that art therapy programs could expand in school care facilities slash rehabs facilities as a way to learn more and monitoring healing treatment methods. So I guess what's your take on that and how this could expand to other facilities and centers for healing treatment methods?
I agree 100% with that. It's not only as a method to a diagnostic method to assess someone's well-being, it's that therapeutic benefit as well that comes from it. It's calming, and it's also something that's very intrinsic to us as humans. Even if you have no artistic ability, even if you like some people say don't have an artistic bone in their body, but you can see by like the popularity of, for example, adult coloring in books. People are drawn to that. There's something about that therapy in creating art, whether it's just coloring in or just finger painting on a canvas, whatever it may be. And it also can be inviting to other people as well to join. So it's not just something you need to do by yourself. So like, um, art classes and things like that. There are therapeutic art programs as well that joins people together. And I think there should be a lot more of those. I agree with you as well. Um, so it can be a very individualistic way of healing, but it can also be very expressive, something that a way to share with others. Um, so yeah, I think it's an untapped potential. There's untapped potential there, I think.
Nice. And then so what do you hope to learn while you're here in Michigan with the Proctor program?
Everything. um, um, everyone keeps asking me that. I'm like, everything. What can you tell me?
Yeah.
So I feel very fortunate to be able to spend some time here. And yeah, hopefully learn everything that anyone has to teach.
All right. So that was all the questions we had in the chat. So thank you so much, Katarina.
Thank you.
Uh, we hope you all found this presentation to be helpful, and we provided a couple links in the chat, including the Proctor Program's resources and our YouTube playlist. A recording of this webinar will be posted to theproctorprogram.org in the next week or so. And educational activities on bipolar disorder like this webinar are made possible through generous contributions. If you are interested in making a gift to support educational materials and events or the vital research of the Proctor program, contact information is in the chat. And you can also learn much more about the Heinz C Proctor Bipolar Research Program and sign up for our e-newsletter at proctorprogram.org. Thank you everyone for attending tonight, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your night.